the club, the culture and the characters. The purpose of the General Evaluator is to evaluate the meeting as a whole and those people who have not yet been evaluated. So for the guests in the room today, there's an awful lot of you, this thing about evaluation, read it as feedback. In terms of the club, yes, Early Bird is an outstanding example of Toastmasters in the middle of one of the capital cities of the world. It's been very well led this year by a marvellous committee, in turn led by Shaheen, and we heard about that earlier. So I think it's important this club is a bit of a magnet for best practice and for attracting guests. In terms of the culture, it's been fairly obvious today how well the atmosphere and the ambience is set, making for a great time for everybody. But most importantly now, that's the culture and the club. Now let's move on to the characters. And the characters are all the people that you've seen today. And I have a list. To demonstrate how well organised this club is, this list was prepared for me. I had my own, but I ditched it to use yours instead. So let's start with, when I walked through the door down the bottom to Neil's footman, the very first thing he almost said to me, a quick GDPR check. Wonderful. And I love the Scottish accent, by the way, and I am half Scottish, Neil, so thank you. The thing I suggest for Neil's is how about having a redefined list that does include where people sign for the GDPR authority. As a recommendation, very minor point, I didn't get a chocolate. In terms of coming into for name tags, Bianca, very warm and friendly, but I got the impression Bianca was a bit swamped this morning, so a suggestion would be perhaps there's a bit too much for one person there, perhaps Bianca could be assisted, and how about an alphabetical list of the names, if we know them by family name, or have A to G on one and H to Z on the other, something like that. In terms of Mr. President, well, Shaheen, as always, is effervescently enthusiastic, sharp, very nice shirt and tie. Today we got an extra treat. We had a bit of a raw variety performance. In terms of the commendations, some singing lessons perhaps, and certainly stick to the J job. Our Toastmaster for today, Shoshana. Shoshana very kindly came over to introduce herself and meet me and make sure my chair was very comfortable. I thought Shoshana overall offered the entire meeting great signposting and kept the meeting flowing very well. The only other thing is my badge has just fallen off. One thing to notice for Shoshana, earlier on there was a lot of arms up here. So I would ask perhaps, as the recommendation, not for just Shoshana but for everybody, it is a sign sometimes of enthusiasm and wanting to get on with it, and it's an animation point, but perhaps try and remember the 2 bags of shopping down here that we hold to keep our arms down by our sides. Timekeeper, Mark Hanley. Mark kindly came over to meet me again, and he had a marvellous laminated agenda, so a commendation on his use of props. I did think that Mark did look a lot to the right and the left, a bit bouncing around, so just perhaps a suggestion would be to all timekeepers to demonstrate, perhaps hold up the lamination and refer to your agendas and the 3 times and the colours on your agenda and correlate between the 2. That might be one suggestion there. But I did think it was very good when Mark said, let's get on with it. Or let's get with it, sorry, let's get with it. Mr. Stacey, who was looking after the guests, Richard asked the guests to stand. Richard was very efficient, I thought, in terms of his use of time. The only thing was, sometimes I didn't know when I needed my binoculars for Richard today, and for some of the people, it was a common theme, I thought. Could please people come to a bit more to the front, please, particularly for some of us who may have a problem hearing. Jeremy Henderson. in terms of the linguist. Jeremy was very prompt, very sharp, very quick to the point. His badge, however, was vertical rather than horizontal. I don't know if Jeremy noticed that. It will be my au revoir soon, so I've got to get one of those in. But I thought when Jeremy came back to the stage, it was a marvellous example of very good listening. Excellent, Jeremy. And it was very detailed. On to Ian Scott, who was the Table Topics Master. A great theme, well-paced, all about winners. Again, this recommendation for Ian was to stand a bit closer. Claude, in terms of Table Topics Evaluator, she took command, moved the lectern. The only thing is for Claude is be careful about, please, always referring to everybody in the third person, and again a bit closer to the front. Cindy's evaluation of Mindy, no notes, very well researched, and again the third person is a good reference rather than she, and I thought Cindy tended to look towards Mindy rather than for the whole of the room. And then on to, in my opinion, the best evaluation of the day, Nina. I thought overall it was masterful. The only downside, Nina, was could Nina have done this without notes? I thought it was, as the saw, heard and felt, was marvellous, impactful and very voluminous. Sabrina on evaluating Solomon, again no notes, it's very strong stage presence. Finally, Robert Taylor, the linguist, very strong, very loud, thank you, and no notes, but again for Robert, perhaps just stand a little bit closer to the front. This is probably the quickest general evaluation I've ever delivered, and I too am near the end of my term of office, so it's au revoir for me, but it's hello from Tasmir, your new Division C Director.